email? What does it mean?
Communication is the imparting or exchanging of information or news.
The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place.
Conversation is the oral exchange of sentiments, observations, opinions, or ideas.
Forbes Books Radio presents The Conversation with Clinton M. Padgett.
Welcome back to part 2 of my discussion with Rob Mortensen, General Manager of Delivery Systems and Services for North America and Europe at EMD Electronics. We pick up our conversation with Rob discussing his problem-solving skills and giving advice for quickly and efficiently overcoming obstacles.
I think we would all agree that data and information, the more we have, the better decision we make, right? And we have really, really good teams within our business that across the entire spectrum, whether it be engineering, people in the field, finance, HR, who are very data driven. So we're looking at data all the time and KPIs all the time, and having that at your fingertips allows you to make good and quick decisions, which appear to be like, I'm good at solving problems, right? But it's our teams and all the data they're collecting. Those are the people who are solving the problems. I'm just kind of pulling it together and putting my finger on this is the solution, and saying, let's go do this. So I would attribute my success to the success of our teams. I think the other interesting thing that everyone would agree with is that as we move throughout our career and get more and more responsibility, there are decisions to be made with less and less data. Because if there's a lot of data available, I don't need to make a decision. People within the organization can make that decision and be really confident in that decision. And I trust their decision because they're the ones closest to the work with all the data. But at some point, we have to learn how to get a little comfortable with risk. And sometimes making a quick decision means you're infusing a little bit of risk in that decision. So understanding the effects of the decision, who will be affected, what are the positives and negatives, and understanding the risk, I think, is a really, really important part of that as well.
Yeah, you use the word empowerment, which I like as well. That's always good.
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there who know a lot more about what they're doing than I do, and I rely on them, to provide that information. We have a lot of great people.
That's awesome. So looking back at the beginning of your career, how has your leadership style changed, if at all, and adapted over the years as the world has gone through these crazy, tumultuous times like we talked about with the pandemic, and before that, the Great Recession, and on and on and on. So how has the business shifted as your leadership mindset has done so?
I've changed so much over the course of my career. When I started, I was literally just at the bench working, as a chemist, and kind of in my own world a lot of times. Could spend an entire day in the lab and talk to just 2 or 3 people. And I've told this to a lot of people I work with. My resting place is I'm an introvert. That doesn't mean that I don't enjoy interaction. It just means that it takes energy for me. And an extrovert gets a lot of energy from interaction. And for me, I put a lot of energy into interactions, So I started out in a really comfortable place where I'm just kind of working by myself. And now it's 180 degrees different, where I spend the day talking all day to people, groups of people, individuals. And I would say along that arc, there's been so much to learn, but some of it has been in the beginning. Some of it was performance, knowing what I have to do, and then getting my mind right and performing in that way. And then the more you do it, just the more comfortable you get with it. The more you speak in front of people, the more you realize that they're not going to throw darts at you. And the more information you understand about your business, and the more you understand about the data and the input required to run a business, I think allows you to stand up and talk about those things much more confidently. So Honestly, if you would have asked me 29 years ago if I could do something like I'm doing today, I would say I can't. I never wanted to have a commercial job because I thought that it would make me too anxious really to be out in front of people, and now that's all I do, you know. So if I can do it, anybody can do it. But I would say there truly is, if you're working on ways to become more social and more confident in your communication, and you don't feel like you're there now, one strategy, which sounds crazy, is to fake it for a little while, to perform for a little while. And then you start to realize that your performance becomes a little bit more of a habit and becomes more of your style, and you can become much more confident in the way you do things.
So fake it till you make it. Is that it?
Yeah, I know it sounds so cliche, but in some cases it really is a very helpful cliche, because it gets us out of our comfort zone and makes us do things that we don't think we're able to do, because we take ourselves out of our normal personality and we perform a little bit, and it gives us maybe a little bit of leeway to be something different than we already are. But the more you do it, the better you get at it.
That's very true. I had never heard your definition of introvert and extrovert before. I like it. And for me, it's definitely true. As I do get energy from interactions with people. Mm-hmm. And when I teach classes, what I've found is if I'm face-to-face classes, my energy level stays high and I'm engaged the whole class, because basically I'm getting energy from the room.
Yeah.
You know, that feedback. And when it's all virtual and people are just, they're on, the camera's muted, their voices are muted, it's just me talking to a screen, my energy just plummets throughout the day. Yeah. So,
well, I can tell you, I mean, when I'm in front of the room doing the same thing, I agree. Like, I have really high energy. It's at the end of the day when I go home. I mean, I have, people I work with that have strictly commercial roles, and at the end of the day, they're like totally energized. And when I go home, I just like fall into the couch and just about die. So.
On LinkedIn, you've written about honest conversations and their importance in building trust amongst teams. Can you talk a little bit more about that? And how do you define an honest conversation in the workplace? What does that mean to you?
It means being transparent. It means being honest with people. It means treating people with respect and giving them the information that they need and that you can share to do their job. I mean, obviously there are things that aren't public and we don't talk about all the time. That doesn't mean we're not being honest. We're just sharing everything that is possible to share to let people do their jobs in the most effective way. I think that does a couple of different things. First and foremost, and most importantly, it builds trust. And when you can build trust within your work teams, it's so important to having each other, all of our work teams, be able to trust each other and make decisions together, because they work much more efficiently and as one team toward a single goal. But the same goes for conversations with our customers as well, and being really transparent about what it is that we can and cannot do, what problems we can and cannot solve, what our schedules are. And like I said earlier, really kind of communicating early when we see those issues arise, bringing maybe solutions, different options to them, and letting them know what is possible and what isn't possible when dealing with our company. If you don't have that trust, it's impossible to have a long-term relationship with employees, with workmates, with customers, with suppliers. There are some people who get a short-term benefit out of, not being as forthcoming and not being as honest in their conversation. But to maintain a long-term relationship is exactly where we want to be in EMD. EMD's been around for over 350 years. And our intention is to have those same relationships with our customers and our employees. And that certainly requires honest conversation.
Yeah, I like that, because to me, it's in the project world that I live in, there's bad news that's going to be out there, and you're much better off to learn the bad news as early as possible then I tell people, look, I'm okay with bad news. I'm not okay with bad news that you've known about for 4 months and I'm just finding out about today because you kept hoping the miracle would occur and this would all go away. But we know the miracle doesn't occur, and let's get out in front of it and solve the problem, because 4 months later, there are a lot less solutions to bring to bear.
Absolutely. We live by that for sure. And that's something that when I talk to our teams that I talk about all the time, that's really, really important to me, is those honest conversations have to be timely. I think, for people who've had kids, it's the same thing. When you get Sunday night, my kids are grown now, but they would come home and say, it's 8:00 on Sunday night. Can we go to the store and get some markers and poster board? And I'm like, well, why on Sunday night do you need that? Well, I have something due tomorrow. You're like, what? Why do I have to now get out of my comfort zone and how long did you know about this? And they're like, well, they assigned it 3 months ago, but it's due tomorrow. So it's the exact same thing at work, right? We can prepare and we can be creative to solve problems, but we need some runway. So please raise the flag and let us know what's going on, and we'll work together on solutions.
I love it. You speak my language. Can you talk about a project or a time in your career where you encountered a major problem and how you overcame it, and what lessons you learned from that experience? Yeah,
I think in a long career, we've all run into a lot of things, but I would say the most recent and the most probably universal issue we've all had to deal with recently, again, during the pandemic, was this, in our industry especially, this ramp up of demand and nobody really being fully ready for it. And so the supply chain really suffered. And for our business, specifically our equipment business, we've been doing this for over 30 years, closer to 35 years. And we've been running very consistently for a long, long time. We have just-in-time inventory. Our suppliers, we literally build a cycle in maybe less than 4 weeks. So our suppliers can send us their hardware that shows up just at the right time during manufacturing, and everything works like clockwork. And then one day the switch flipped, and there was all this chaos. And we came into the factory and we started to manufacture, and all of a sudden a valve's not there, or a controller's not there, or whatever it might be. And it was totally unexpected. And the learning there was, we can't rely on doing business the way we've always done it. Because when we look back, we dream of being, just having this consistent, almost unconscious flow of business. But we don't have that anymore. And we all have to really hold hands, communicate, and work differently now to make sure that we can handle those upsets and some of that chaos environment. Again, it comes back to being agile and having good communication, and having a culture where we value a lot of feedback. We value people who are raising their hand saying, this is a problem, we need to do it differently. We value people who are willing to invest their time to try things different to get us some improvement. We continue this year, we're going to have another record year, even with all these supply chain issues. And the way we've done that is to change the way we do business. And change is tough, right? It's tough for all of us. So we're still all learning how to do it differently now. But again, it's this communicating early and often, and asking people to please be honest about what's happening at the factory, what's happening at their customer site, what's happening at the supplier site, what's happening in our labs, to be honest about what's happening so we can solve the problem, instead of just throwing up our hands and saying the supply chain's a mess and there's nothing we can do.
Yeah, I think just in time is great. It's super efficient and reduces the storage costs at a factory or facility. But when it works, it's fantastic. Yeah. Boy, when it doesn't work. Right.
It was fantastic for a long time, but it's not anymore.
Yeah, I don't think I realized pre-pandemic exactly how many people worked just in time like that. And boy, that's just, when it didn't work, the whole world came to a screeching halt.
Right. So now we, not just us, our customers, our suppliers, we've had to change our inventory strategies, our ordering strategies. We've had to make risk decisions about how much and how early we order, how early we signal the market and our growth. All those things are really learnings that have happened in the last 3 years. And it's surprising, not just for us, but across the whole industry, how quickly that the ship has turned, you know?
Yep, absolutely. What do you consider your biggest career achievement so far, and to what do you attribute that success?
I mean, I think I have a lot of personal successes along the way. I would consider the job I have right now as with the biggest scope and biggest impact, probably a really big success for me. I attribute that to loving every job I've ever had. I think it's so important to stay in the moment and do a great job at what you're expected to do now. Certainly there's room in that job to expand, start learning new things and moving into other areas to learn more about it so you're ready and prepared for whatever's next. But honestly, I've never had a job that I didn't think like I could do this for a long time. I really have with intention enjoyed every job. Now that doesn't mean there hasn't been challenges and I haven't had to have a mental reset every now and then. And I mean, we all need to do that, but I think the really important thing that I've learned over the years is to open new doors, you have to be really good at what you're doing now. And careers don't grow because you're thinking about I would be better if I would have more scope or more impact, I would be more engaged. You really need to prove in what you're doing today that you're really good at doing what you're doing and what you've been asked to do. The only way to do that is be engaged and to really enjoy what you're doing.
I like it. Sounds like you're passionate about it, which is important.
I am passionate about it. I really love this business. It's super exciting, challenging, and crazy at times, but
but crazy is what makes it fun.
Yeah.
So let's pull out a crystal ball and do some forecasting. Where do you see the semiconductor industry heading in the next 5-10 years? And where do you think you'll be at that point?
Forecasting is a dangerous game.
Exactly.
You know, our sales forecasts go out 6 quarters, and sometimes we look beyond that, and it's tough. It's tough to do. But the great thing about this industry right now, the semiconductor industry, is you know, in terms of like semiconductor materials and equipment, the market was $150 billion worldwide for a long time, and over the last 5 years, we've gone way up. Like we're over 500 now, right? So along that way, there's been dips. The semiconductor industry is notorious for having peaks and valleys, but the growth has always been consistently up. Over the last few years, as technology has really ramped, and we see the Internet of Things and AI and transportation changing, you know, automobiles changing from a driving experience to a computer experience. These things have all really amped up the demand for semiconductor. So when I look 5 years out, 10 years out, I see growth. For sure, we're going to have periods where, as always happens, we build a little bit too much capacity. So things soften a little bit and the business slows down a little bit. That's always happened. And I think it would be foolish to think that it wouldn't continue to happen. But the overall arc and growth of this business is consistently up. And for us in the equipment business, we really grow when our customers are growing and building new factories. And I've heard and read that to keep up with demand, this kind of demand for semiconductor, that at least 10 new fabs a year need to be built over that period, over the next 10 years,
Wow.
At least. And so that's really where we see our growth, And so I think for us, the future is very bright. It's a great place to be and a great business to be in.
It sounds like it. Absolutely. So as we wrap up, I have 3 quick questions to ask, and then we'll get you out of here. So are there any leadership principles that speak to you personally and guide your day-to-day behaviors?
Well, I like to say the same thing over and over. I like to focus on, 2 or 3 really important things that I think everybody can really get their head around and really work with intention toward. I think that's super important when managing organizations, whether they're small or large. There's a lot of details, and I'm a big fan of doing the details right and having the big things take care of themselves. But for me, it's so important to have those big things be really visible and understandable to everyone. So you could ask anybody in the organization, why are you doing what you're doing today? And the hope is that they would say, because it has a direct line to one of these 3 things. I think that's super important. And then the other thing I think that just from a personal standpoint, I mentioned it earlier, and that is to really enjoy what you do is super important to your career. It's very visible to others when you don't enjoy what you do, and nobody likes to interact and follow somebody who doesn't enjoy what they're doing. So for me, it's really important. And then we've talked over and over about it, and it's what you build your entire podcast around. It's about communication. It's about being open and honest with our employees, treating everybody fairly, and making sure that they have access to the information so they understand the context of their work. When you do those things, you're going to have work teams and organizations that all can pull in the same direction. And we're able to absorb a lot of the growth that we're seeing now because we have people who understand why they're doing what they're doing.
It goes back to that understanding the why. I like that. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Wow, I've got a lot throughout the years. I think there's something that's so cliche that I don't even know who I heard it from, but it's opportunity favors those who are prepared. And I think about that a lot when in an organization and a business that changes a lot. And there's always going to be a lot of opportunity. I don't have to worry. And when I talk to our teams, you don't have to worry about what's next. You need to do a great job at what you're doing. Think about your career, work with intention, but those opportunities are coming and they are given to people who are prepared. They're given to people who understand the job they're doing now, how it fits into the bigger picture. Just it kind of all falls back to this understanding the why and working with intention and doing a good job at what you're doing now. And you're much more likely to get that next opportunity when you act that way in your current job.
Right. What's the best book or article you've read recently, and what was the key takeaway?
I love to read, and I haven't found a whole lot of time to do it recently. But when I read, I don't read a whole lot of business books. So I get a lot of, like, I consume blogs, TED Talks, short articles, things like that. And the most interesting thing that I've heard lately is my son sent me a podcast. It's called 99% Invisible. And I don't listen to all of them, but he sent me a specific one about a group of individuals in Mexico City who buy and resell metal, and how in Mexico City the unofficial market, is about 50% of the business market there. And there's a lot of noise. I don't know if you've ever been to Mexico City. My wife's from Mexico City, so we spent some time there. There's a lot of noise in the market trying to get attention. So this podcast was about a specific reseller who at one point in his career realized, like, my voice and my message is the same as everybody else's. And he asked his 9-year-old daughter to tape his message so he could record it and then blast it out throughout the streets while he's going up and down the streets. And it was unique enough that he got a lot of attention. And what he did with that attention is he was really generous with it. He didn't go out and try to profit a lot from that. He relied on his business to generate profits, but for other resellers in the same market, he shared that with them. And it spread across the city. So now this little girl's voice is all across the city and has kind of become a cultural thing, you know? And to me, it was so insightful that when we are generous with the work that we do as individuals, obviously as businesses, we need to monetize our product. That's part of being a business. But when we as individuals are generous with what we know, and we share it with others, we all grow together and our business grows. And I thought, even though it wasn't a business related podcast, when I finished with that, I've talked about it so many times with our teams. It was like really, really interesting how such a small act of generosity spread across a city of 22 million people, you know, second or third biggest city in the world. And now there's, you know, artists who are sampling this little girl's voice and working it into their music. And it's just become kind of a cultural phenomenon. And it just started with somebody who's willing to be generous with what they've learned.
That's a great way to end this. So, Rob, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you being on the conversation.
I've really enjoyed it, Clint, and it was great to meet you. Hopefully we get to work again soon together.
Thanks for listening to The Conversation. To find out more about Clint, go to clintonmpaget.com and pick up Clint's book, How Teams Triumph, Managing by Commitment, at Amazon. The Conversation with Clinton M. Paget is a production of Forbes Books.